Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 2020 podcast, Canada's #1 optometry podcast. I'm your host, Harbir Sayan. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me here, guys. I'm super excited. I'm here in Quebec City at the 38th Congress of the Canadian Association of Optometry, and my amazing guest is Dr. Patrick Sauvageau. Patrick is an optometrist. He's a clinic owner. He is a serial entrepreneur. We're going to be talking about his medtech company, Zelia. He's also vice president of the Quebec Association of Optometrists. He's doing everything and anything possible, and he's doing it really well. I'm super excited to have you here, Patrick. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation.
Thanks. Well, listen, if you haven't been to Quebec City, first of all, you guys need to come here. Visit Patrick. He lives here. Really excited. Patrick, one of the main topics of discussion here, I'm seeing like 3 different lectures just this morning, is AI. So we're going to talk about a little bit about AI. But let's just kind of rewind and talk about your journey, first of all. You went to Montreal for optometry school, and then when did you have all of this like insight to do all the different things that you're doing and become an entrepreneur?
Well, first of all, as you said, I went to the University of Montreal School of Optometry. But for me, just the process of choosing a career path was not easy. I had so many interests. And so many things that I wanted to do and pursue and so forth. Ended up going to optometry school very first summer as an intern, started working in the lab, got that interest also growing from there. Ended up doing my OD degree and then a master in vision science as well. Wow. And graduated in 2010. And started to practice here in Quebec City.
Great. And then the inspiration to start your own company, and we'll talk a little bit about clinically. You started your own clinic and that, but I want to focus a bit more on the technology side of it. When did you have the inspiration to start your own company? What was the inspiration to start your first company? If you don't mind telling us a little bit about what that was.
Well, actually, when I came out of school, I started practicing in an ophthalmology practice here in Quebec City.
Okay.
Did that for 2 years almost, and that was really exciting and interesting, and I learned a lot. But I knew I wanted to be also an entrepreneur. I always knew I wanted to have my own office, so to speak. And so 2 years after graduation, I joined a clinic here with two partners, so that was my first real experience in entrepreneurship. Learned a lot in the whole process.
Yeah.
I ended up buying the clinic entirely a few years ago, so now I'm the sole owner.
Okay.
So that was in 2012. Couple of years afterwards, with a classmate, we started 2 other clinics in Montreal.
Yeah.
And that was also a really good learning experience.
I bet.
Because it's something to buy a practice, obviously, but it's something else to start it from scratch. So that was another ball game.
Very different.
And then again, a couple of years later, 2016 now, I had this idea of building a software platform, an e-commerce solution, so to speak, for eye care professionals. So I joined forces with software engineers, and we launched that project as well, that we sold a couple of years afterwards. Okay. And that was my first experience in software development and in AI development as well. So I learned quite a bit from those experiences altogether.
Yeah, I bet.
And so as for Zelia, the way it came about, coming back to my master degree that I did, right off the bat almost, I kind of perceived the potential of what that idea was that we'll talk about probably some more. But figured there would be probably, first off, a really good opportunity to learn more about ocular health, and also probably it could mean a good business opportunity. So in 2017, I joined forces then with my brother, who's a PhD in engineering.
Oh wow, great!
So it seemed like a good match.
Yeah.
To start a medtech company, and so that's what we did. in 2017, we did a first capital raise with private investors. We hired our first employee, and we really kicked off from there.
That's awesome. Definitely cool to be able to work with your brother and to have somebody like that in your family who's going to have that level of expertise.
Absolutely.
In that area. That's very cool. And so you've been in this game of like entrepreneurship, but like in software, digital type of world for a while now.
Yeah, since 2016.
Certainly got a good amount of experience in it. We'll come back to Zelia. We definitely want to talk about that because that, is going to be, I think that's definitely a form of technology that's going to be groundbreaking for Eyecare. But let's go a little broader. AI, it's definitely a hot topic right now. A lot of people are talking about it and want to learn more about it. And as I was saying, again, there's been a few lectures today, just this first half of the day on AI and its applications. So again, big, broad question here, like what is AI right now as far as legitimate applications in Eyecare today? What do we think like could be potentially the applications and what's kind of in between? I know we talked a bit about regulatory things and all of that. So again, loaded question, but let's just see what you think.
So the potential for AI in Eyecare is immense, and so it could change the way we're practicing altogether, from scheduling to the way we're selling products to the way we're managing, detecting, and managing ocular diseases, the way we're fitting contact lenses. It can have really meaningful impact in a lot of ways. Now, what is available today for us? Not that much.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of potential, but not a lot of actual clinical tools that we can use.
Right.
And they are pretty. There's a lot of challenges for those technologies, for AI technologies in general, to be adopted clinically.
Yeah.
And you touched on one of them, regulatory approvals is a really, really big one.
Yeah.
Right. And when we're talking about regulatory approvals, talking about Health Canada here in Canada, talking about the FDA in the US, and there's a whole process to getting a drug approved or a medical technology approved, diagnostic technology approved, or an AI algorithm approved. And the first thing is not only have to build an algorithm, you have to validate it.
Right. Not
only you have to validate it clinically, but you have to be able to explain it. And so there's a lot of cool papers that we're seeing, in the scientific literature or in the news, advancing or saying that we could, detect this or that with the use of a photo or, but at the end of it, if it's a black box, if we don't know what the AI is actually doing, it won't pass the bar for regulatory approvals. We need to make sure as eyecare professionals, as healthcare professionals, that we understand the tools we're using, that we can have good confidence in them, and that we know their limits also and their potential biases.
Right.
Otherwise, we don't know what we're doing.
Well, it reminds me of like back in school math class. You have to know the answer, but you have to show your work. Right?
Yeah.
You get the answer, but it's obviously a lot more complex now. But I think that's one of the things that scares people is that it's a lot of times a black box. We just don't we're scared of what we don't know or understand, right? So how did it figure that out? How did it get to that?
Exactly. And it's something to have a black box solution to suggest you movies or music. It's another thing to have a black box solution to diagnose actually, ocular diseases. So when we're talking about healthcare, we cannot apply the same rules as just, general technology, right? Because it can harm people if it's not done right.
Do you think regulation right now is too strict, too stringent, or is it maybe too lax? Is it just right?
No, I think it's evolving as it needs to. And so the framework is evolving as the technology also, all those things are, evolving really quickly.
Yeah.
The AI technology we're referencing to are quite recent, right? And so the regulatory framework needs to continue to adapt. Obviously, One example is that even if you get an AI system or an AI algorithm to be approved now, it cannot learn in the process. It cannot evolve with the data it's collecting right now with the current regulatory framework. You'll have to submit a new version of the algorithm. And so, and so when we think about that, that's entirely different from the other AI systems we're currently using in our car, on our phones, that are constantly evolving, constantly learning in the process. The systems we're using in healthcare actually cannot do that with the regulatory framework in place.
Interesting. Yeah, and otherwise it would be learning every day. It would be something different every single day.
It would evolve and so forth, would be more and more accurate, hopefully, less and less biased, with real world data, and not only clinical trial data, right? But yeah.
So let's go more specific then to you and what you're building and what you built with Zelia. Let's if you could give everyone the elevator pitch. What is Zelia? And then we'll kind of dig into, because it's super exciting and the potential applications are numerous or innumerable. Let's go. Yeah, please.
It seems so.
Give us the intro to Zelia and what's been going on there.
So Zelia is a medtech company, as you said. We're developing a revolutionary platform that uses three things. So imaging, spectroscopy, and AI to assess and measure biomarkers in the eye, with an initial focus on oxygen saturation or ocular oximetry.
That's awesome. So imaging, spectroscopy, and AI. So tell us, like, what is spectroscopy and how do those three things come together then?
Sure. So if you think of it, any molecules or proteins react differently to light, right? And so when we shine a light on those things and we collect the light that comes back, we refer to a unique spectral signature, a bit like a fingerprint. And so when our technology, what it does, we're shining a low intensity light actually at the back of the eye in a fraction of a second. We collect the light that comes back. It provides us two things: images, or an image at the back of the eye, and a spectra that we can analyze to assess and test and look for those unique spectral signatures. So in the context of oxygen saturation, we're looking for the spectral signature of oxyhemoglobin. Right? Okay. Hemoglobin that is loaded with oxygen, that is transporting oxygen in our blood. And so we're looking for the ratio of oxyhemoglobin versus the total of hemoglobin available in the blood at the back of the eye.
Right. Hemoglobin that's carrying oxygen versus hemoglobin that's not oxygenated.
Exactly.
And that different signatures.
Exactly. Gotcha. And that's exactly what we do when we measuring oxygen saturation on the finger, right? It's the same rationale. We're not doing it and sensing it the same way, because we're talking about measuring the tissues at the back of the eye. And that was a challenge to do or to achieve. But it's the same rationale of what we're doing when we're sensing it on the finger as well.
Right. Different technique, but measuring the same, quantifying the same thing, oxygenated hemoglobin versus non. So you have the technology, you have the device that takes this image, measures these different spectra of light. And I imagine there's noise of other different spectra coming through, but you're able to, because of the specific signatures, pick out how much oxygenated hemoglobin there is. And is this in the retina as a whole, or are we talking just through the blood vessels, or what?
So we can measure anywhere at the back of the eye. And the cool thing about the eye in general, and we know that as eye care professional, is that the eye is a unique window into someone's health, right? Yeah. We keep saying that, and because it's true. And there's two major reasons for that. It's the only place in the body where we can directly see and assess what's going on in the blood vessels, or we can see the blood vessels. And also the retina is an extension of the brain. The back of the eye is the front of the brain. And so because of that, we can leverage that and through our technology, basically measure many more biomarkers present in the blood at the back of the eye. Right. Can do that with oxygenation, and we can do that with many other biomarkers.
And you already know the spectra for those different. So are you already gathering that data, or can you, if you chose to, like, measure, I don't know, what other, you could tell me proteins or other things, and in the back of the eye, you have the ability to do that already? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
All of the above.
Okay.
So basically, we're collecting the spectra, and then we can build new algorithms to measure spectral signatures that are known, or we can eventually look for new spectral signatures of things that haven't been characterized yet. There's a lot of things that have been characterized through spectroscopy, not applied in the eye, but applied in the blood that we can leverage. But there are also many biomarkers that haven't been characterized yet.
I see.
And that we can look for.
So oximetry, then, oxygen saturation, what is the implication there for ocular disease?
So if you think about it, ocular oximetry is the biomarker of metabolism in the eye, right? If we're thinking about metabolism, the best way to measure that would be to measure oxygen saturation, oxygenation. So oxygen saturation is a marker of health and disease in general. And over the last few years, it's been shown to be linked with the pathophysiology of glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, macular degeneration, retinopathy of prematurity, and so on.
So pretty much all of everything.
Right, because it is linked with ocular health in general. And so the retina needs a lot of oxygen to perform correctly for homeostasis. But the oxygen concentration needs to be well regulated as well. It's true in the brain and it's true in the eye. So if there's a problem there, a dysregulation, so to speak, something will happen in terms of damage, and that will lead to what we see with other means. And currently, the best tools we have in our clinics are really based on looking at the structure, right? 2D imaging, retinal cameras, 3D imaging, OCTs. We're looking for signs of damage at the back of the eye. Right. But we know now that damage, structural damage, so to speak, is preceded by dysregulation and oxygenation.
Interesting. So we, in theory, in practice now, you'll tell us, but be able to detect these conditions prior to them causing the damage that would then show up on these other tests that we have.
Exactly.
So this is going to help us detect it earlier.
That's absolutely the goal.
Gotcha. And
do a better job at managing them as well. With
true.
Either the current treatment options we have are to help pharma companies develop better options, better therapeutic options,
gotcha.
Based on this new biomarker.
Right. It's not just the diagnosis; it's then the monitoring of the condition.
Exactly.
That's excellent. So, I mean, please share more details or information if you feel like that so we can convey kind of how this technology works. But what stage are we at right now? Are you at with the technology? It's been tested? When can we start to see it? Where is it? What stage is this at right now?
Sure. So the platform is fully developed. We have run 8 different clinical trials in 4 different sites to date, enrolling more than 700 patients.
Okay.
We have really cool and exciting data in both glaucoma and diabetic retinopathy. And this year will be pretty intense in terms of data collection, as we'll launch many other clinical trials in Europe, in the US, and Canada.
Okay.
So it's a pretty it's a pretty exciting, period for us.
For sure.
Because we're collecting data, showing what oxygen saturation can mean for eye care professionals in the field. In terms of the next important milestone, obviously regulatory approval is on the short list.
Yeah.
So we're working really hard to get our both FDA clearance and Health Canada clearance in 2025. That's the current goal.
2025, exciting.
Yeah.
Really
so it's coming.
Very good. And who is going to have, once it's there, let's say we're in 2025, who's going to have this? Which types of practitioners are going to have this in their office?
So obviously my dream would be that the Zelia ocular, the name of our first product, would become a gold standard for eye care professionals worldwide. Okay. So that's really the intention here. Obviously, we're targeting optometrists and ophthalmologists to start and use that technology right after approval.
What I wanted to ask you, when I was kind of leaning towards there, Patrick, was the applications. You know, you've chosen one specific biomarker that's going to be extremely relevant to eye care and eye diseases, but there are other potential biomarkers that can be relevant to all sorts of healthcare professionals. And when I start to even think about that, it's like mind blowing, the applications. I imagine you've already thought about this.
Yeah.
So like, is that overwhelming? Are you excited? Like, what are you thinking as potential uses for this device?
No, I mean, it's just every week we had biomarkers to the wish list, right? So it's really, really, really exciting. We see a lot of potentials, in a lot of different disciplines. We see other biomarkers, important biomarkers in eye care. We see other biomarkers for neurology. We can think of Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, MS, and so forth. We see potential in cancer detection. We see potential in cardiology. We're going to have a project starting soon on that. So we're really excited about the prospects, about the potential of it all. But obviously, every time we need to start looking at it. For every biomarker, we need to do some clinical work, clinical trials, validated, and so forth and so forth. But the list is pretty long already in terms of potential biomarkers.
Wow! So this could be huge. This could be huge.
Hopefully, this will be huge.
Will be huge. Sorry, this
Hopefully.
will be huge.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for you for sure. It's so exciting, very exciting to see Zilia Ocular on the market soon, and then Zelia XYZ ABC applications down the road for all the other healthcare providers. I want to get towards kind of wrapping up a little bit here. I definitely want to have you back. We talked about this before. I definitely want to have you back on because everything we talked about we can expand on, right? The AI conversation, the entrepreneurship conversation. We barely even touched on entrepreneurship really, and like the challenges and the hiccups and all the things that come along the way. And somebody like yourself who's done so many things and done so many things simultaneously, like all together, family, business, founding new businesses, all these things. I think there's so much to be shared there with the audience, so we can all kind of learn from that. And there's a lot that we can relate to there, but we'll save that for the next conversation. Before we get to, there's two questions I ask every guest at the end of the episode, but before we get to that, I want to just say, how do people find you or learn more about you or Zelia? You can share some contact information.
Sure, absolutely. If you want to learn some more about Zelia, it's zeliahealth.com. Pretty easy to reach out to me via LinkedIn or via my contacts on our website. Otherwise, my clinic is called Optiboutique if you ever want to look at it also. And we're just 1 kilometer away from here. Yeah. So as you mentioned in the intro, you're welcome to come by. Yeah. And I extend the invitation to any OD colleagues that want to come and visit me.
Great. Awesome. And before we actually move on to those last couple of questions, I want to give a quick shout out to our mutual friend, Dr. Henry Ruiz, for making this introduction. So Henry, if you're watching or listening, thank you very much. So last two questions that I ask every guest. All right. First question is, if we could hop in a time machine and go back to a point, we didn't really talk about the challenges and these things of entrepreneurship and whatnot, but if we could go back to a point in your life that was challenging, a difficult time, you're welcome to share that if the experience or the moment, if you'd like, but more importantly, what advice would you give to Patrick at that time?
Well, that's a good question. Well, probably, I think I would go back to before I had to make any decision with regards to university and the program I was about to choose. For me, it was pretty intense because I really didn't know where to go, what to do. I hesitated between optometry and many other programs. Right. And probably the advice I would give myself is just chill out. You always have time to change if you don't like it. I've been fortunate because it turned out pretty well for me because I love what I do. It opened up a lot of different avenues for me. Otherwise I would have, I could have changed quite easily. I could have do something else. But back then it was a pretty anxious period. Because I was really trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Right. Contemplated going to music, for instance. Oh yeah, so that's another conversation.
Yeah, there's how many more episodes are we doing here? definitely that's going to be one of those things I want to talk to you about as well. All right, that's good advice. I think a lot of times we do stress out and get caught up in the decision making. It's a big decision to make, which way your career path.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But one choice doesn't have to define you for the rest of your life. I think is a really good piece of advice for any of us at any stage of our career, but definitely that student who's trying to make that choice in their career path. And it's nice to know that somebody who's become as accomplished as you had to go through that decision making yourself, and then that's what you've learned from that experience. So thanks for sharing. The last question I ask is everything that you have accomplished to this point, Patrick, how much of it would you say is due to luck and how much is hard work?
Well, again, I believe in hard work. But at the same time, obviously, I've been lucky for some, in terms of, I can think of many ways I've been lucky. Finding my wife, my kids and so forth, and finding the right partners also. Right. And having, I guess, the good ecosystem around, because I don't believe in self-made people.
Right.
Or in that concept. At least I really don't see it as such for myself. It's a matter of the ecosystem I was fortunate enough to grow in. Yeah. The people I've met, the things that I've learned through those encounters, and to this day, the people that are accompanying me and the process in my journey. So yeah, it's a tough question, but it's definitely a mix. Yeah. But for sure, determination and just sheer work. I could have done it without working really, really, really hard. That's for sure.
That's for sure. Absolutely. All the things that you've been doing, they don't happen just sitting on the couch.
I don't think they do, no.
But like you said, I think it's a nice perspective to say you're lucky to have certain people around you, although that probably is a result of your work as well and the effort that you're putting in different places. But luck has different forms, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Sometimes we think of luck as like just winning the lottery, but luck could be the chance that you met a certain person and you connected with them.
And the many great colleagues I've been working with, either in my clinic or at Zelia, and every day I tell that, I tell that to myself, that I'm really lucky to work with those great people.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick. I appreciate you taking the time, and definitely we'll have to sit down. Next one, if we could do it in person, would be amazing. If not, we'll just do it virtually, but definitely we'll have you back on to talk more. And I look forward to all of us, as colleagues, us in the industry, to see Zelia coming out and the effect it's going to have on the industry. So thanks very much.
Thank you again.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in to the 2020 podcast, Canada's #1 optometry podcast. I will be back with another episode very soon.